Hello, my name's Suli Breaks and welcome to Seven Figures, a podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs about financial literacy and the processes and fundamentals they've learned in building a seven-figure business. Today we have CEO and co-founder of Kano, Alex Klein. How you doing, my bro?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, bro. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. You know what I mean?
Amen, yeah.
But today we're going to try and educate the people. Normally we're just arguing back and forth about music, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Or suggesting, complimenting.
Complimenting,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, complimenting.
And sometimes also complimenting, being like, Suli, you look great today.
And sometimes I say, Alex, you look great. What happened to the beard?
Shaved off. It was too ticklish, yeah.
What was I going to say? Okay, so for those who are unaware, do you want to start by speaking about what Cano does?
Sure, yeah. So Cano is a creative technology company. We are quite well known for creating the Cano computer kit, which is the first computer you build yourself like Lego and that teaches you to code. So even if you're 6 years old, you put the pieces together step by step, the speaker, the battery, the screen, it comes to life. And then our software teaches you how to make music and art and games in real programming languages. So we started with, computers. We moved into speakers and cameras that you build and code yourself to make you independent and creative, not just consuming technology, but making it. And then last year we released the very first ever Harry Potter wand that lets you cast spells on an app it's connected to, and then lets you actually code your own spells. So take things that were once sealed and remix them and remake them. That's the idea of Cano, creative technology. Yeah.
It's dope. I remember the first time you guys kind of pitched it to me and you took the iPhone and you were like, this is the iPhone. You know everything that happens on it, but you don't know nothing about what goes on inside it. We're trying to open it up so everyone can see that world. So I think, and I've seen the journey. It's been amazing, man. I'm actually, I feel very proud of where you guys have come specifically from where you started from. So let's get into the conversation around entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? Cano is your first business venture. So tell me about Alex. Tell me about what is your relationship with entrepreneurship growing up? You know what I mean? What was your relationship with entrepreneurship?
It was something I never wanted to do.
Really?
It was I never wanted to be in business. I thought it was something that would be, start shirts, kind of trying to cheat people. That's really what I thought. And it was completely wrong, I thought it was something that was about taking. And I think it's actually a lot more about giving. And oftentimes before you even make your first dollar, you have to do things for free. And the money comes after, I think, at least for me, and not that we're rolling in it, but the money in revenue that Cano's been able to get by selling product is because we love doing it. We craft it, and then people respond to it, and you find as you grow more and more, there's a need to keep that front and center because you'll get more pressure to think only about selling rather than the experience itself. So yeah, growing up, I came from a family, my dad's an entrepreneur, my cousin, my uncle,
very good,
both uncles and my grandfather. And so I guess as a kid, you always are I'm going to break out, be different than my family. I was, I wanted to be an actor.
Improv comedy, yeah.
I did improv comedy for 5 years, yeah. I was a journalist, so I was a reporter for New York Magazine, for Newsweek, for the Times of London here in London. I was covering the Church of Scientology and Mitt Romney's tax returns, and I was covering all these areas that I'm nosy. I want to get into things and figure out what's going on and try and see through the walls. And so I was doing that with writing, and I was doing that with design, and I did a bit of graphic design for the Lincoln Center. But yeah, I guess being entrepreneurial is just about for me personally I just want to not be in a system of just doing it because somebody said so.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for you probably. It's you always want to elevate and search for something new because we live in this time in history where there's internet on Mount Everest, computers are cheaper than curling irons, you can learn almost anything for free.
100%.
So why not absorb all of that and reflect it outwards and contribute? Because that's what it's about. We have such a short amount of time on this planet.
100%.
Yeah.
So in that vein, we're talking about, like, you've obviously kind of grown to have a passion for entrepreneurship, and you grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So I can see that instant kind of rebellion. Where does the switch happen in your story? Where does that transition? Because I remember you telling me you was under threat from the church.
Yeah.
but where does the transition happen where entrepreneurship actually becomes a part of your personal life? Because I mean, most people, it's two ways. Like you said, your parents can do something, you can be inspired to do the same, or you can go the opposite. Where does the switch happen?
I think for me, it was a specific moment in my, like, so I went to university. I did like lots of theater. I did journalism. So I was writing opinion pieces. I was getting in trouble for the things I was saying, because you experiment with ideas.
Yeah.
And then if you're doing that in public, sometimes people are like, what are you saying?
Yeah, 100.
Like, yeah, but you got to sometimes let yourself have a bad idea in order to have the good idea. So I was doing that, and that actually led to a role. First I was doing that in my last year of university. I was just freelancing for New York Magazine. I went to New York City every week, and I embedded with the protesters at Occupy Wall Street. Oh, wow. So if you remember, like there were these huge protests against the big banks, the big hedge funds, and I like both my brothers are like. My middle brother has been a Marxist academic.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, around the dinner table, I've heard about it.
Yeah, and my younger brother is part of the socialist alternative. And like at this time, after the financial crisis, when the economy started to collapse and jobs were being lost, people took to the streets in Zuccotti Park, next to the birthplace of this guy, Alexander Hamilton, musical about him now, who almost invented financial capitalism. And they were in these tents. They had their stoves. They were cooking. They were organizing. They had hand signals to communicate across the square. And I was kind of there as this green college student, asking them questions, being kind of polling them. And that reporting was my first exposure to a pretty avowed and direct challenge to the current way the economy is structured.
Okay, yeah.
But what I noticed that a lot of people at the protest didn't have the information. They didn't have the kind of basic facts about the way the banking system is structured, the way tax works, and because of that, they couldn't fully articulate in a way that would allow them to stay an alternative. And for me, it's like, journalism has always appealed to me as a pursuit, as kind of a noble pursuit, because at the core, and we see this on Facebook and on social media, and with what happened in the 2016 election, people are kind of, due to our evolution, because back on the savannah, you would survive by being more aware of things that could kill you, like a snake jumping out or 100%. A saber-toothed tiger. Like, if you're scrolling through Facebook or on the internet today, the thing that's most likely to grab your attention is a negative thing, or a bloody thing, or a sexy thing, you know? And so what really appealed to me about journalism is, how do you make the important things, the useful things, and the beautiful things as sexy, as interesting, as, directly applicable to people in a sort of a gut way as the rest of that stuff. And journalism is supposed to be about providing people with the information and the tools they need to be citizens, to make the right choices. Yeah. This is a roundabout answer. Yoda would be much more succinct than this. Go on. Long story short, in 2013, 2012, the journalism industry started to collapse, right? And I was working at Newsweek. I'd gotten this role after reporting on Occupy Wall Street. And they saw all of their web traffic was going to the social media platforms, and they started to think, how do we compete with them? Let's stop writing these long pieces, these kind of nuanced analyses. Let's stop providing the information. Let's provide people with a quick hit, a quick, let's aggregate, let's take somebody else's content, summarize it, put out 25 posts a day, and not really delve deep too far below the surface. Yeah. And they shut their print magazine actually at the time. So Newsweek magazine actually shut down the magazine and only existed online.
Yeah.
At that time, I was working on a piece for the magazine on the Church of Scientology. And your listeners may know the Scientology is this religion that was started, about 40, 50 years ago by a science fiction writer, L. Ron Hubbard. Which is kind of you go into these secret temples and you hold these two electrical pads and they look at how the meter on the pad goes back and forth, and they tell you what's wrong with you psychologically, and it's bunk, but it gives people community, which is what they're searching for. So you shouldn't frown at that too much. But the Church of Scientology has always been very secretive about how they spend their money. Getting back to the topic of this podcast, they're a religion, so according to the government, so they don't have to reveal any of their finances. And what I kind of discovered and was reporting on was that they were using this to operate a real estate scheme in which they were going to small business people, entrepreneurs actually, who were members of the church. They were getting them to donate more and more money in order to build a church, a temple, and giving them false information. They were saying, "Hey, you're a car salesman in Buffalo, New York. You're a member of the Church of Scientology. Hey, in Buffalo, there are over 100,000 Scientologists and they have nowhere to worship. Please donate some money and we'll build this temple, this ideal organization." And they would donate the money, donate. The building would go up. They would open the building, grand opening, and the car salesman would find out that there's like very few Scientologists in Buffalo, New York, like 1,000. And he's like, "What? You've lied to me. I want my money back." They're like, "Sorry, we've taken the money." And the church, this building, hugely valuable building, is now ours. So anyway, wrote this story. Newsweek wouldn't run it because they were afraid of being sued by the church. They thought it was too risky. And I left. And that piece ended up running in BuzzFeed of all places. So you can go search for today's Scientology self-destructing. Went to graduate school at Cambridge, met the inventor of a little chipset, a little brain called the Raspberry Pi, this amazing open source piece of technology that hackers and hobbyists were like sending into space and under the ocean. Yeah. They're making like Bitcoin miners and Beowulf cluster, all this complex stuff. But the moment that turned me from sort of a curious guy, and I actually was interviewing Eben for a journalistic piece at first, asking a lot of questions. Oh, okay. And maybe like that's the first thing that I've arrived at as a helpful thing in my early days as an entrepreneur towards like having a business that can bring in some revenue. It's like asking more questions, like trying to be more on receive than broadcast. Like that was very helpful. I asked all these questions of the inventor of the board, and what became clear is this piece of technology could be much more applicable to more people than it was. Like it could be simpler. It could be more vibrant and fun. And we just put all the pieces in a box and we designed a beautiful book that would let people put the pieces together like Lego. And we showed it to Micah, who was my little cousin, who's 6 at the time. He's quite entrepreneurial. He has founder shares.
He's definitely on job.
Yeah, and he said he wanted to make his own computer like Lego. So that idea actually is really Micah's idea in a core way. And the first computer kit was tested with him. We crowdfunded it. We took it to Kickstarter. It raised $1.5 million in 30 days. It was backed by Steve Wozniak. It was simple. It's like, make a computer. Don't just use a computer. Understand the way it works. Don't just be like the monkeys in 2001: A Space Odyssey who were like, pawing at the monolith. Like, be someone who can understand and influence the world around you, but not in like a homework broccoli and Brussels sprouts way, in like a Zelda, Minecraft, Kanye West way, like putting pieces together in a new way that is undiscovered. And we Cano, our goal is to be a guide, is to be a tool set and a story, not to be like a solution to all your problems, but like a way for you to find the solution, whether you're 6 years old or older.
Cool. I think people get a wide kind of scope on who you are and where you were going and how you ended up in the offices at Cano.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it structurally then. So you've gone through this journey, so you have like a kind of ideology that's driving you to be an entrepreneur. So structurally you step into, we're building this business, you know, obviously you have co-founders, you have you know, you have inspirations. How does the business start? Because I remember the crowdfund, and I remember, you know, when it hit 1.5 billion, I remember that. Do you understand? How does the business start? And we're talking about, how did it start from like idea to seed round, who were the first investors, you know, to crowdfund, why did you crowdfund, how did you crowdfund, to the next, to the round 2, etc. Do you want to go into it, the more like logistical aspects?
Yeah, so I mean, we put together an initial prototype, right? And then we raised a seed round, right?
Yeah.
So the prototype that we had was quite a simple box, and we had a slideshow. Worked on it with Saul, my cousin, like, who knew about investing. So like, if you have someone who knows more than you, ask them, you know, who's in your family or is a friend. Like, he gave great advice on this deck. We pitched Index Ventures, you know, here in London. Yeah. They came in, they wrote us a check. That gave us enough money for about a year of development, right? So then we recruited a team of 7 other people. Do you want
to go into how much it is for the year of development?
Yeah, I mean, it was $1 million for the first year. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of seed investors, actually. We're sitting in the offices of one of them now, Local Globe, who will write checks of that size. If you have I guess what you need, what any investor wants to see is like a talented and passionate set of founders who also have some relevant skills.
Relevant skills, if you could elaborate.
I guess it depends on the project.
Yeah.
You know, if you, you know, if you're someone who is looking to found a business that is, you know, in music, it's like helpful if you've had exposure to music. You know, I think at the seed stage, you know, inexperience is not as much of a barrier as long as you have like a clear concept. The market is big enough, because, you know, that's really what I've found investors want to see. They want to see there's a big market. They want to see that there's a team that is like completely committed. It's good to have co-founders as well. So
okay, so you'd advise having co-founders? I
think so. I think teams tend to get more attention than sole founders. You know, I have a great co-founder. You know, Jonathan Raz Friedman, Israeli entrepreneur, is an amazing co-founder to me, and yeah, we went through a lot of stuff together, and couldn't have like gotten the business off the ground if we didn't have you know a shared passion. I think that's what it is really. It's like
Jon is a passionate guy.
Yeah, it's like a shared passion. Because if you have that, it's like, you know, it's rare in a way. It's rare. And so like, I think a lot of people would be like, I want to start a business because I want to start a business. I think it's the other way around. It's like, you got to be passionate about something. And for me, it was like, you know, it was this idea of like demystifying the world. It was this idea that the world had become, and is still like, suffused with information. There's so many options. But it's a beautiful and amazingly unique time to be alive. I think people can be negative. People can be like, you know, they go online and they hear the negativity, but like the tools are there if you know where to look. And so my thinking was like, how do we take these elements and combine them in a way that a 6-year-old can start writing code with the simplicity and fun of Lego and make their own website, make their own game, you know. And that's, as a kid, more than the idea of being an entrepreneur, as we were discussing earlier, it was like, that was what was really what I loved. Like, I was like always doing stuff on Photoshop. I was like messing around with design, drawing, writing stories, writing poems. Yeah. I just had this sense that programming could be as creative and as expressive as all of those things, but that there was no simple way in for most people. Yeah. And, you know, we were just one, you know, I've got my Code Academy shirt on. There are other guys who like make it accessible. And I think a lot of great businesses today are being started around that idea of like, not necessarily inventing something like that the world has never seen in the Steve Jobs way, but more like combining what's already there, taking individuals and people through in a simple way, like whether it's insurance, whether it's curation of music and images, being a guide rather than just a provider of something new. Yeah. I think that SBTV does something similar.
Yeah, SB, Jamal, when you just spoke to me, it was the same thing. You're taking something and making it accessible to the people that need it.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about, so I think you've given useful insight into how to approach an investor, what the structure of your team should be like. So you guys raised that first the first million from Index. So then where does the crowd fund then the crowd fund factors in, because I suppose Index is like a close knit group of investors. Now it's like, I suppose there's exposure in the crowd fund. Then how did that, what was the thinking behind that?
There's the exposure. I mean, we were very fortunate because like we kind of hit like a vein of luck on Kickstarter as well. Yeah. Like it was a time when like when you raise money on Kickstarter, that in itself was like news. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So like we took to Kickstarter the first computer you build yourself, and that money was really to finance a lot of if your business is like a software business, right? Your main cost, you might have some costs for operating a server, like an Amazon Web Services server or something. But your main cost, the cash out, is going to be your people, right? The people who are writing the code, the people who are doing the design, you know, promoting it. We have hardware, so we make a physical thing. So the crowdfunding campaign was about bringing in money to finance inventory, to finance like the buying of components and stock. Oh. Okay. So we took that money, we went to China. You know, we found a group of suppliers. First, it was a group called PCH. Then we hired an amazing guy called Mike, who's still with us, you know, 6 years later, who helped put together a network of relationships in China to get us the cables, the keyboard, the case. And we took that money, we continued development, we bought the stock, and then about 10 months later, we shipped the first production of 13,000 kits to 86 countries. Wow. Yeah. I haven't told this story in a while.
No, it's interesting. I remembered. I was in the Kickstarter video. I don't remember that.
Of course,
that,
you were. I think I remember your quote exactly. It was like, Cano gives people the tools to create.
I didn't even know that. So let's talk about this. So you've in this position. You've raised money. You've kind of like crowdfunded. But obviously, what was the pressure like? So if I'm someone who's in a position, I've raised $1 million for my business, you know, I've crowdfunded, so I've got a significant amount. I can make the software. I have the team that's working on it. What pressures come with it now? Because I mean, like now, I suppose, have you got a target to hit for next year? Or what is the pressures with it now? Because it's now no longer just an idea or a concept. Now it's a business. What is the pressures of making it as a business?
Look, I think the pressure at that point is kind of the same pressure as now, which is like you can never get complacent, and you want to become profitable and self-sustaining. Yeah. You know, but the more you focus, it kind of goes back to before, like it's a balance. If you focus only on returning money to yourself and your investors right away, you may miss opportunities to invest again. So like we raised, we had enough money to keep going to ship the first production, but then it was successful, so we raised more money. I mean, we went out and raised another round. So you know, we did a $4 million round. You know, Local Globe was a participant. Like, we went out and then we raised 15 million after that. After that Kickstarter campaign in the ship, because there was a lot of momentum. You know, there's a lot of press interest. So it's another good lesson, I think. It's like when times are good, like when you have like good momentum and like people are rolling, like, and people are buying your stuff and talking about your stuff, it's actually quite a good time to get your head down and think about bringing in new investment and bringing in new team, and like, you know, making sure you make hay while the sun shines, right? Well,
so when you have momentum, that's the best time to try to source like more like support for your actual business.
Yeah, whether it's raising money or hiring people, or I mean, that's the big one, raising money. I think like, and momentum can come in many ways. Like, you know, I think one thing I've learned through hard experience, I made tons of mistakes like this, of like something good happens, like, pop the champagne. Not literally, I don't drink champagne, but but just like, great, it's so great. Like, I'm going to enjoy, maybe I'm going to chill out a little bit now because, things are good. But like, no, like that's actually the time to hit it even harder.
Yeah.
Because that's when there's the shine on you. And that's when, it's like Elon Musk has a quote about this, which is like, if the odds are in your favor, you got to make as many moves as possible during that time, because then more of them are likely to come off. Whereas like when things are a little bit on a low, you can make an equal number of moves and maybe none of them will come off. So it's like an ancient Israelite thing. It's like, what was it? Was it Joshua with the Technicolor coat who predicted Joseph, yeah. Joseph, exactly, who predicted to the Pharaoh, like, you're going to have 7 years of famine.
Yeah.
So, like, you better save up the grain now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the Pharaoh was like, yeah, let's do it.
Wow, you have okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So we raise more money. And look, we're a growth business. So not every business is going to be like ours. Like, we're venture funded. Our goal is to be sustainable, but also to grow and get more out. Yeah.
Could you break down those two terms just for anyone who may be listening? If we're talking about venture funded and the growth business, just so they can understand the distinction between like what the terms actually mean.
So like venture capital or like VC, I won't claim to be the world's leading expert, but I can give a story, which is like, if you've heard of like Moby Dick and whaling, venture capital begins with like in like over 150 years ago, when ships would go out to sea to kill whales to get their oil to light lamps. That was like the oil industry before we drilled it out of the ground. It was like hunting for whales. And at the time, there was no guarantee of success, right? So the ships would go out and sometimes, they would come back with nothing. And sometimes they would come back with, the equivalent of like $10 million of whale oil. It was, and you didn't really know. It wasn't the way it was before, where like we're gonna plant a field and there's this much corn and we kind of know how much corn we're gonna get out of it. Yeah. So venture capital is basically like, we're going to invest in this ship. We're going to buy the ship. We're going to employ the people. We're going to give you some ropes and stuff. We're going to invest our money, and in exchange we get 30% of the yield, whatever comes back. Yeah. So a venture capital investor basically takes a bet on you and says, we will fund you, but you got to come back. Well, when you come back with the dough, hopefully, we get a third of it or a fifth of it. And for a company like ours, like what a lot of venture investors are aiming at is like going public. And when a company goes public, it's like it raises a lot of money from the public markets, from just people like Apple or Shell can just raise money from people on the stock exchanges. Some technical terms here. I guess.
No, we need all of them. It's important.
Yeah. And on the stock exchange, like anyone, from your web browser, and people can try this at home. Like you can buy shares in Apple right now. You can go buy shares in McDonald's, right? So if Cano was to list publicly, we'd raise a lot of money. People out there in the world could buy our shares, and who would they buy those shares from? That share of the whale oil, like they would buy it from the venture investors who, at the beginning, put in the money and took the risk, and they would make their money there. Or if a company, like if a larger company than Cano came along and was like, we want to buy Cano, for this much money, for $100. We'd be like, are you crazy? If they would buy for $100, we'd be like, a certain percentage of that would go to, Local Globe and Briar Capital and Thames Trust and Mark Benioff and all the people who have taken bets on us along the way. So, I think it's if you don't have your own money, because I was a journalist at the time. I'm lucky that I come from privilege, right? But I was a journalist at the time, so I didn't invest my own money in the business. I got investment from others. I take that really seriously, and it means that as you grow, you have to constantly be aware that you have a responsibility to your investors and to make money for your investors ultimately. And I think that is a good discipline, I think, at any stage of business. If you own the business completely yourself, if you're able to, then you have a responsibility to yourself.
Yeah.
But shared responsibility, I think, sometimes actually leads to great products.
Yeah, definitely.
And, it gives that sense of a collective working together. And we also get lots of fantastic wisdom and advice from our investors, because usually they've been people who've been very successful in business themselves.
Yeah.
Getting an investor is a great way to get started on a business of any stage. Just someone who believes in you, who'll put in. Doesn't have to be $1 million. It can be, it can be any amount, really. Yeah. And I'd probably do it all over again. Not in every, 90% of the ways, actually, but that way, yeah.
In that, before we get to the point of wrapping up, I think I want to ask you as well. When you're talking about getting investors, in the interviews I've done, I feel like there's been there's two train of thought. So some people would advocate getting a product, like a minimum product, and then going to seek an investor, then showing them like you did with the prototype. And some people would advocate just go with an idea, go with a deck, go with a concept. Which one are you more in favor of, or do they equally have the same merit?
It depends, which is kind of a cop-out answer. I mean, I think if you can, I think if you can make something, it shows credibility. If you're just going with a deck, an investor is going to be more asking about your experience and your skills, because you're basically like, here's my concept. But concepts alone are worthless in a way. And I hate to say it because I love ideas. I'm a concept person. But in a business sense, execution and, which is a very grim word. I would say doing stuff instead of execution. Doing stuff is really the thing that counts. There were dozens of companies that had the idea for Facebook before Facebook. There were, the key ideas in the Mac and in the iPhone and technologies in both of those things existed at other companies, at Xerox PARC. Even Nokia had it in a sealed lab. But Apple, Google, what they did is they had the passion and the drive to make something. Just to make something, I think, is such a powerful statement to investors. But the thing alone has to sit within an opportunity to make more than that thing. Yeah. And the credibility to go and do it. So, I mean, I'm a maker. I like making stuff. I like demonstrating stuff in meetings. So my bias, if you're a product oriented company, you've got to show something 100%. You've made for the product. You got to show some design, some engineering. If you're more of a service business, if you're going to do consulting or teaching or training or, any service, cleaning, delivery, you could probably get away with more of a conceptual thing, but your concept better be really buttoned down, have some really strong numbers in it, and be really simple to understand in 10 seconds. Yeah.
Cool. So what advice would you give to a 18-year-old? They have an 18-year-old, they have an idea, they think it's going to be the next Facebook or whatever, and they want to start building a business. What would your advice be, the first step they take at this point, based on your experience?
I really believe in learning by doing, and I really believe that experience is the best teacher. Yeah. Which is, and the best thinking you often do with your hands. If you have an idea that you believe is going to be the next Facebook, also think about what the world will be like in the future and whether that idea that you have could be something even more than Facebook in a way. And there's a lot of talk about unicorns and making $1 billion company. And I think great ideas often arise into reality when people don't necessarily think about making it like something else. You know what I mean? There's a lot of we're going to be the this of that. We're going to be the Uber of astronomy, or we're going to be the Star Wars of I like that one actually. We're going to be like the Star Wars of amusement parks. Like, but I think if you're really passionate about your idea, like write about it, draw it, show it to people. That's actually a big piece of advice. A lot of times I was with an Uber driver. He was like, I've got this idea, and it's so big, and it's a design, and I want to find someone who can patent it for me. I'm like, well, what's the idea? He's like, I'm not going to tell you. And I feel like just tell people because ultimately, like, it's the energy and the making of the thing that will be of value more than the idea itself.
That's
like
a good point.
The idea itself, like that vision that you have, is just hold that and treasure that and use it to propel you forward to like make more and more things and let it take on a life of its own, and let yourself have bad ideas, and share and be open and collaborate and and believe in yourself. If you got a dream, like, keep chasing it. Like, seriously, I mean, because you may not actually achieve the dream that you thought you had at the beginning, but you end up somewhere else that's way better than if you kind of let others influence you too much, or if you felt that if you felt at a certain point that you couldn't do it. I don't know. That's kind of advice as old as time, but like, get it out there and do it rather than just think about it.
I think a question I actually want to ask, which was inspired by what you just said about doing rather than just holding it to yourself. How much value is experience to you? Because Cano's your first company. Like, you've never had another company before that. Some people have worked for companies that are kind of like maybe in the technology space or in the same space that they've gone on to build businesses in. So what is your take on that experience aspect of it?
I think what's interesting about entrepreneurship is like you are kind of making it up as you go along. Really valuable businesses often discover things that just didn't exist, like a scientist in a lab. They discover something, or they find a trend, and they not only follow that trend but make something new happen. Yeah. I think I've been definitely improvising on improv comedy, by the way. Like, I've definitely like been able to keep the show on the road, but I think that's only because I've had people around me who brought experience, right, in certain areas. Like, if it's your vision, be confident in your vision, whether you have 10 years of experience or you're 16. Seriously, like, there are 16, 17, 18-year-olds right now who are like learning how to code for free online, who are like learning how to do electrical engineering online, who are like creating like huge fan bases by telling stories and writing poems, like you, like, and becoming wealthy. And I think everyone who succeeds in that way, I'd be interested to hear if this is true for you as well, like, brings in the advice and the wisdom of others and uses their experience, but keeps their own vision central as well. So it's a balance. You want to influence, you have to allow yourself to listen and absorb the experience of others, but you've got to keep your beginner's mind and your sense, which is sometimes like crazy, your sense that I know better. I have an idea that no one else has. You have to be a little cocky. You have to be a little bit like, yeah, I got this. What do you think? Did you have those influences?
Oh, totally, man. I mean, I grew up like listening to artists and watching other artists and living vicariously through people before I started shaping the things that I created. You get what I'm saying? And I think that is kind of like not transactional, but it's kind of an exchange. I think everybody who's creating is exchanging with someone, whether they know it or not, to kind of fuel that vision.
Yeah.
So the main question we get to here, the last question, is kind of 7 figures. How did it feel when you saw your first million?
So it felt surreal, and the way we saw it was on Kickstarter. I think when we raised the investment round, it felt great, and it felt like and I'm talking about the investment round with our original investors, the equity investors. But I didn't feel at that point we had truly done a creation. What really was the first million in my eyes was the Kickstarter million. That was when we had customers paying $1 million for our products within. Well, here's the story was we wanted to raise $100,000 in 30 days. We ended up raising $100,000 in 16 hours, and people posting about it all over the internet. And then we hit the million about halfway through the campaign. And what we did is to celebrate the million. It was right before New Year's Eve, so I took. With Leo, who you know, with Leo
bro.
Dawson, our filmmaker,
My bro.
we took a Cano kit, a prototype, the one we had showed the investors. We took it and we stuffed it full of fireworks, and we went out to a park. God, where was it? It was around Hackney Road, I think.
I think it was like Mile End, wasn't it? Mile End,
maybe Mile End.
Or maybe Hackney. Actually, I can't remember.
I forget. So we stuffed this kit full of explosive fireworks, and we put it on this elevated stone in a park, and the idea was like light it and watch the fireworks like all explode out of this kit. So I was the guy with Leo who was like lighting the fuse. So it's like, we've hit $1 million. This is amazing. Like, you know, it's raining. Leo's filming at the side of the park. I light the fuse in the center in this kit, and it starts going faster than I thought. So I run and I leap off the stone and I land and I like really badly sprained my ankle, like really, really bad. Like it's like made a horrible noise as well. Like, and like Leo's like, oh my God. So I'm like limping away to Leo. Fireworks are going off behind me. We hit the million. Then Leo put his arm around me and he kind of like carried me to the hospital. It was Homerton General Hospital. He sat with me for a bit, and then I went away. I went back to the US to tell my friends what I'd done. But I was in a big ankle boot, and
I remember seeing you in it. I remember on the story,
limping around. So I'm prone to misfortune. I'm very clumsy. So I guess the million was a combination of exhilaration, gunpowder, and pain. And there's definitely been a lot of not all three, not gunpowder. There's been a lot of exhilaration and pain. Yeah, that's the last thing. You got to deal with the pain because business is painful. You got to be resilient. You know, it's the whole entrepreneur cult of like, oh, you know, we're crushing it. Like, and you only hear the good side. Like, it's a lot of like, it's a decent metaphor actually. Usually every million, every success, there's a sprained ankle or two along the way.
Yeah, that was good advice. I'll give you that. That's a nice
go on that one for you.
Cool, man. I have to ask. So just before we finish, what will be? What are your top 3 tips for building a 7-figure business?
Top 3. I love the rule of threes. The rule of threes is a great tip, actually.
Yeah.
I've been using it a lot recently.
Okay, do you want to elaborate?
So the rule of threes is like, oftentimes, a joke will have 3 parts. Like, you know, oftentimes like the most a person can really internalize in one moment is like 3 concepts, you know, and that's why you asked me like, what are the top 3 tips? So I think tip 1 is like, communicate in a simple and clear way. I think tip 2 is have faith in whatever it is. You know, just have faith. It can be in God, it can be in nature, it can be in progress, but have faith in something good that is even maybe beyond your business, because that will help drive you forward in your business or in whatever it is. Just, you know, so communicate in a simple and clear way, have faith, and
because she could probably remind you of some of the things you said if it helps.
Yeah, I've got ask questions that you said at the beginning.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Ask questions. I was gonna say, yeah, asking questions. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I would say communicate in a simple and clear way, have faith, ask questions.
I like that.
Yeah.
Alex, my bro, thank you for your time. As a pleasure, always, man. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. It's beautiful.
Good.